Well, welcome back to Stand on Guard. Have a little bit to update you on before we get into question period. I hope you had a chance to watch my video this morning on the Online Harms Act. This is seriously very bad news for Canadians, for free speech. And I'm going to briefly refer to a couple of things here and update you on what I have learned since this morning. This is not legislation that is going to make it's safer for Canadians or to reduce harms. They're talking about this being about children, about keeping children safe, about clamping down on child pornography. We already have laws against child pornography. This is aimed at content that foments hatred, content that incites violent extremism or terrorism. Guess what the Trudeau government defined as violent extremism and even terrorism? The Freedom Convoy. So any content that I put on here that is supporting peaceful protests like the Freedom Convoy can be construed as inciting violent extremism. This is an evil, evil act. Online Harms Act introduced yesterday by our Justice Minister. Let's have a look at the next slide here quickly. It's going to create something called the Digital Safety Commission of Canada, another government department, another government agency under something called the Digital Safety Ombudsperson of Canada. You know what I'm calling that? I'm calling that the online censorship czar. This is somebody who's going to be interfering with free speech, with online posting, with online media. And guess what? They're telling us, hey, we're not going to put you in jail right away. We're going to ask you to change your product, to change your message, to change what you're putting online. And if you don't do that, then we'll come back and put you in jail. So, good afternoon, everybody. Yes, we're going to question period very, very briefly here, but I wanted to give you an update. What I did not include in the broadcast this morning was some of the penalties for hate speech, for harm, for content that's deemed to be harmful. Let's have a look at this first slide again. Categories of harmful content. Anything that's inciting hatred, and they're going to be defining hatred based on what the Supreme Court has said in the past. I don't even know what that means. It's going to be a broad definition of hatred, and it's going to be very, very dangerous. So I want everybody to be aware of this. This is probably going to come up in question period. Damn well should. I want to see the Conservative Party vehemently oppose this legislation because even some of the mainstream media are coming out and saying, hey, this is blatant censorship masquerading as protection of children and some initiative against child pornography. That's how they construed the news conference yesterday. It was a charade. It was nonsense putting up these people to talk about sexual exploitation when the government is after free speech as usual. Do I sound upset today? You're damn right I am, because people are going to fall for this unless we show them. But like I say, it's not working so far. It's not working so far because people are realizing this is dangerous stuff. And what I didn't report this morning is that there's a potential life in prison sentence for hate speech. Hate speech is now going to be its own law. It's not going to be an aggravator. It's not going to be tagged to something else to make one crime worse because it was motivated by hate. That's what hate speech has been up till now. Now it's going to be its own law. Violate the hate speech law, and you could go to jail for life. I'm not making this up. It's in the bill. And you could be fined up to $70,000 by a human rights tribunal that are going to be revitalized under the Human Rights Act, which will now be going after hate speech, something that the Harper government removed. That was the right decision. Get this out of the Human Rights Act. Stop these human rights tribunals from persecuting people for saying the wrong thing, for supposedly fomenting hate because they said something the liberals or the woke ideologists disagree with. This is where we're going in Canada. I am going to oppose this with all of my might, with all of my energy. And you need to know what's going on here. So, Online Harms Act, it is harmful. The act itself is harmful. I'm just I'm just checking in the question period here in my other ear to see where we are. Thanks for tuning in today, guys. This news conference yesterday with the Attorney General, this non-entity who Trudeau took out of the back bench, put him in the front bench. Now he's got total control over this censorship file. The Online Harms Act is part 3 of Trudeau's censorship program. It's the third bill he's introduced. The other 2 have passed. They have been prohibitive of free speech. They have been bad news. This is worse than both of them combined. And the Attorney General, the Justice Department has this file completely in their hands. It's no longer associated with Heritage Canada. That's because they're going to let loose the criminal code on the media, on especially new media and independent media. They're going to let loose the Justice Department on journalists who disagree with Justin Trudeau. They're going to weaponize the Justice Department in the criminal code. And that's what this is all about. So thanks for watching. Thanks for tuning in. Question period is about to start here. But I am going to be talking about this issue. I've been warning you for the last year. This was coming. I thought it was going to be called the Online Safety Act. But guess what? Trudeau wised up. The Liberals wised up that you know what that means. You know the Online Safety Act wasn't going to be about safety. You heard too much about it. You knew misinformation and disinformation were buzzwords for censorship, for this Trudeau government shutting down free speech. So they've changed the focus from misinformation and disinformation to hate speech. And who wants to be for hate speech? Who isn't against hate speech? Well, it depends entirely what hate means, what hatred means, what hate speech is, how it's all defined. And you can bet they're going to define this in the broadest possible way. So we're going to go to question period now, where the statements by members are just ending, and I'm going to continue to comment on this as question period develops, because I guarantee you we're going to have some questions on this.
Community Mental Health confirmed that men's sheds provide clear and significant mental health benefits by generating opportunities for camaraderie, a sense of purpose, and a sense of inclusion. In Northwest BC, the Fraser Lake Men's Shed has been up and running since 2018. Its members run a small second-hand store, and they do odd jobs around the community for folks who couldn't otherwise afford a professional. I want to give special recognition to John Fenema and John Stafford from the Fraser Lake Men's Shed, who recently traveled to the neighboring community of Houston to share with residents there their men's shed experience. At a time when mental health and social connection are more critical than ever, the Men's Shed movement is a grassroots response that is making a difference, and it's good to see. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Manicouagan. Today I have the great pleasure of welcoming a delegation from my constituency, Côte-Nord. First of all, I'd like to welcome these ambassadors from our region. Denis Mius, Mayor of Sept-Îles, Paul Lavoie, Chantal Pitt, and Pascal Langlois from Sept-Îles Economic Development, and John James Blanchette, Director of the Sept-Îles Ouchat McManny Utenam Chamber of Commerce. So today I won't be alone in extolling the virtues of our region, which is the size of a country where resources abound and opportunities are endless. We have a deep water port responsible for nearly 50% of the traffic on the St. Lawrence, which is our pride and joy. A region bursting with great and welcoming people, with projects and ambitions that are part of a drive for sustainable development, for a better future for all. Today, these
So don't forget, folks, to like this broadcast. We need to start beating not just the Trudeau censorship, but the YouTube censorship. YouTube is getting worse every day with banning, with suppressing information. We're still reading statements, but as soon as Polyev gets up, we're going to go right to question period. I just want to add a few things here, because The censorship is getting worse, not just from this government, but from YouTube. They're suppressing information they don't like. I had a broadcast about Ukraine the other day. They totally demonetized it without any explanation because they disagreed with it. I'm hearing the same thing from my friends at Redacted. I'm on Redacted tonight, by the way, to talk about the Freedom Convoy suing the Trudeau government. Watch that tonight with Clayton and Natalie Morris. And I'm also going to be talking about the Online Harms Act later in the week. Clayton and I talked this morning about it because we need to publicize this information to promote opposition to this bill as much as possible. And it is absolutely maddening what is going on here. And I can't wait to hear Pierre Paul's first question here.
The honourable member from Sydney, Victoria.
No, we're still going. Anyway, we promise I'll get you to. Yeah, so share this broadcast with your friends and your family. When you ring that bell, when you hit the thumbs up, when you subscribe, or when you become a part of this broadcast, you're beating Trudeau's censorship. He doesn't want you to watch this broadcast because he has said time and time again, why can't we go back to that good old days, the good old days when we just had the CBC, the CTV, and Global, and we didn't have social media. We didn't have people doing YouTube shows. We didn't have new media like the Post Millennial or Rebel News or True North. We didn't have media like that. We just had the Globe and Mail. We just had the Ottawa Citizen. We just had the Toronto Sun. Here we go.
After 8 years, this Prime Minister is not worth the cost or the corruption. Today, the Conservatives received a letter from the RCMP Commissioner confirming that there is now an investigation, a police investigation underway on ArriveCan. The Commissioner confirmed at committee that the Prime Minister refused to provide documents for SNC-Lavalin and Aga Khan scams. Can the Prime Minister commit right now to deliver all the documents and all the evidence to the RCMP with respect to the ArriveCan?
Deliver the documents.
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Oh, Trudeau's not there.
Mr. Speaker, we have said for several weeks now that the RCMP is seized with the ArriveCan affair, primarily because high representatives from the agency sent documents to the RCMP and have asked the RCMP to look at this affair. Several investigations are underway. We're going to continue, Mr. Speaker, to be available and to give authorities all the documents and information they need. Thank you.
Trudeau cannot hide.
The opposition.
This Prime Minister is not worth the cost or the corruption. Today, Conservatives got a letter from the Commissioner of the RCMP indicating that the National Police Force is now formally investigating the Arrive scam and the Auditor General's report into it. Now, we know that the Auditor General the government deprived the Auditor General of key documents to calculate the full cost and the breadth of the scandal. We also know that the Prime Minister refused to hand over documents in the SNC-Lavalin and the Aga Khan Island scandals. Will the Prime Minister commit here and now to giving the RCMP all the documents and evidence on Arrive scam?
The Honourable Minister for Public Security.
Mr. Speaker, again, the Leader of the Opposition seems to be impressed with some information that's been known in the public space for many weeks. The RCMP have confirmed previously that they're looking into the circumstances around ArriveCan. We have total confidence in the RCMP to do this important work. I'll remind the Leader of the Opposition that the President of the Border Services Agency referred these questions proactively to the RCMP, and we'll continue to do whatever we need to do, Mr. Speaker, to cooperate with the National Police Force and every other ongoing investigation.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Other investigation. How many police investigations are they facing, Mr. Speaker? After 8 years, this Prime Minister is not worth the cost of food. Today, we got a terrible report from the charity Second Harvest, which reports that this year they expect 1 million additional visits to food banks, and that last year 36% of charities had to turn people away because they were running out of resources. Will the Prime Minister reverse his inflationary carbon tax on farmers and food?
The Honourable Minister for Innovation.
Mr. Speaker, when it comes to Fight for Canadians, we will take no lessons from these conservatives, Mr. Speaker.
No listen.
Today, I just appeared in front of the Agricultural Committee, and Mr. Speaker, it was shocking to see that one of their members was defending the profit margin of foreign food processor, Mr. Speaker, at a time when we should all be fighting in this House for Canadians, Mr. Speaker. If
We're not working for Canadians.
want to do something for Canadians, vote for C-59, increase competition in this country. More competition is more choice, better price for Canadians, and more innovation, Mr. Speaker. Canadians understand that. Will he understand?
I can understand
The
you.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Speaker, what I understand is that after 8 years, this Prime Minister, this NDP Liberal Prime Minister, is not worth the cost of food. And if you thought that grocery profits were too high, after 8 years, you'd think he might have done something about it. But instead, we now have a massive increase. Let's get this straight. Second Harvest predicts there will be 1 million more visits to food banks this year than there was in last year's record-breaking year. In fact, many charities can no longer give people food because they've actually run out. In light of the failure of the carbon tax and the pain it is causing, will they axe the tax so that Canadians can afford to eat?
Trudeau is starving
The
the
Honourable
country.
Minister for Innovation.
One thing Canadians know, Mr. Speaker, is that the Leader of Opposition, the preferred verb is cut, Mr. Speaker. We all know he would be cutting. When you're looking at the record on both sides, Mr. Speaker, let me tell you what we have done in the last few months to fight for Canadians, Mr. Speaker. We have launched the largest reform on competition in this nation history. We have made sure that we have a functioning Consumers Bureau of Affairs, Mr. Speaker. We have made sure that we have now in this country more measures to fight for Canadians. Mr. Speaker, every member of this House should be fighting for Canadians. The question is, will the Conservative fight with us for Canadians?
Good point, Alan.
Honourable Leader of
My
the
channel
Opposition.
should have many more
Speaker,
viewers. It's
after
being
that answer just
suppressed
proves that
by
after 8
YouTube.
years, this NDP Liberal Prime Minister is not worth the cost. It's not just that 1 million more people will visit food banks this year than in last year's record-smashing year. It's that now there's a large Facebook group of 800 people, 8,000 people, who call themselves the Dumpster Diving Network. So desperate are they that not only can they not afford groceries or find it at food banks, that they're literally jumping into garbage cans to find food.
Well,
how desperate do Canadians have to get before this government will finally axe its tax on food?
The Honourable Minister for Housing, Infrastructure and
they want to
Communities.
starve it.
Mr. Speaker, over the past 8 years, I have watched time and time again the Conservatives stand up to vote against the very measures that are putting money in the pockets of families to help them cover the cost of food. When it comes to the Canada Child Benefit, we stopped sending checks to millionaires so we could put more money in the pockets of 9 out of 10 families. When it comes to taxes, we raise taxes on the wealthiest 1% to cut them for the middle class. When it comes to seniors, we put more money in the pockets of low-income single seniors. On every one of these measures, the Conservatives have opposed them. We will continue to do what's necessary to allow families to put food on the table, no matter how hard they oppose.
The Honourable Member for La Prairie. Everyone should be worried about the Liberals and NDP's love of
Thank you,
spending.
Scott.
But Quebecers have one more reason. Spending isn't one of our priorities.
I don't
They're
care what
spending to give
Quebecers are saying.
Canadians what Quebecers already have. First, it was daycare. Then it was privately run dental care. While Quebec already has its own publicly run system. Now it's Quebecers' drug coverage they want to offer Canadians. Since they're simply imitating Quebec's expertise in pharmacare, will Quebec have the right
The
to opt
numbers are
out
not
with
going
full
up today.
compensation?
Suppression.
The Honourable Minister of Health. Soon, Mr. Speaker,
Oh, and this
there
blowhard.
will be a bill at the House of Commons that will offer the opportunity to reduce prices on drugs and to increase access to medications. And I hope that all members and all here in this House will support this legislation. But it's important not to criticize something that hasn't come out yet. We need to wait for the bill to be presented. The honourable member for La Prairie. Even more urgently, we need full compensation and an unconditional right to opt out of dental care. Quebec already has its own plan, and it's public. Also, unlike the NDP Liberal plan,
the numbers
which
are going
brings
up.
the private sector
The
into
numbers are going up. It's
through the
working.
front door.
We're
Quebec already has
beating
clearly
YouTube.
expressed its desire to improve its own
God
plan.
damn
If Quebec
YouTube.
is innovative enough in healthcare to be imitated in Canada, it must be good enough to
Thank
have
you.
its
Thank you.
expertise respected.
We're
When
beating
will Quebec
YouTube.
receive its unconditional share of federal dental funding? The Honourable Minister of Health. Once again, Mr. Speaker, it's clear that the Bloc is seeking
your bill will
arguments.
be targeted, gospel
And
testament.
for us,
We're all going to be
our
targeted. That's
attention
what
is
Trudeau's all
focused
about.
on increasing the
That's why
quality
I'm
of
fighting this guy.
health care of Canadians across the country. In Quebec, for example, Quebecers, well, it's essential for them, for everyone across the province to receive the dental care they need, and that's our objective. And it's in a spirit of cooperation that we can obtain this. It's not through squabbles. The honourable member for Rosemont, La Petite Patrie. Mr. Speaker, a recent report has revealed that 30% of Quebecers don't have a GP. 1 out of 3 don't have a family doctor. The Prime Minister promised to invest and provide healthcare providers, but people still don't have a family doctor. Health transfers are not coming, and Quebec is paying for the broken promises of this government. When will the Liberals do their share so that all Quebecers have a family doctor?
Yeah, that's a good point,
Minister of Health. Mr. Speaker, it's notable that the Canadian government, $200 million extra over the next 10 years for healthcare. And yes, it does take time to find a good agreement with every province and territory.
Those numbers are going down again.
But clearly,
YouTube.
By
Screw you,
end
YouTube.
March, there will be agreement with every province and territory to increase the quality of healthcare and to ensure that our healthcare system is the best possible system in the world. That's our objective, and it is only possible through cooperation.
For Kingsway.
Mr. Speaker, every Canadian should have access to the healthcare they need when they need it. But a new survey reveals over 6 million Canadians don't have access to a family doctor. The Liberals promised
numbers
to hire
going down again.
7,500 doctors and nurses in the last election, but haven't delivered. And while Liberals delay, Conservatives want to cut the healthcare people depend on. When will the Liberals act to ensure more doctors and nurses are hired?
What the hell? One of these dippers pretending he's an opposition MP again? You're in Trudeau's pocket.
Minister for Health.
Damn it all.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And coming out of the pandemic, coming out of some of the most difficult times that our planet has ever faced in terms of global health, we have stepped forward. I want to thank the member in the NDP for his work and for pointing out that the Conservatives will cut and cut deeply. When they talk about what their plans are, they fail to mention to achieve them, they are going to need to cut billions and billions out of health with devastating consequences. In contrast, we are investing in every province, in every territory of this country to make sure that we have the best healthcare system in the country. We will be relentless in that focus, and we will not let the Conservatives deter us.
I'm going to continue to fight the Liberals and YouTube.
Well, common sense Conservatives will axe the tax, build the home, fix the budget, and stop the crime. This NDP Liberal Prime Minister is not worth the cost. And he's going to make everything more expensive on April 1st with another carbon tax hike, and the effects on Canadians are devastating. A new report from GoFundMe says that Canadians started 200,000 online charity drives to help raise money just to cover day-to-day expenses. Instead of forcing Canadians to ask for help from online crowdsourcing campaigns, why doesn't the Prime Minister do the obvious thing? Cancel his carbon tax hike and stop making things more expensive.
The Honourable President of the Treasury Board.
Mr. Speaker, last year was the hottest year on record on the planet.
What the hell does that have to do with anything?
And his party continue to deny climate change. Meanwhile, with our carbon rebate, we are putting money back into the pockets of Canadian families. Are they going to vote against $1,200 for Ontario families, $1,800 for Alberta families, $1,200 for Manitoba families? That doesn't sound like common sense to me, Mr. Speaker.
Well, what the hell would you know about common sense?
We're going to axe the tax and leave the money in Canadians' pockets in the first place. And Canadians aren't fooled by the shell game. They know the rebate doesn't cover all the costs of the carbon tax as manufacturers and producers raise their prices to pay their share of the carbon tax, and all that gets passed on to consumers. But you know, sites like GoFundMe used to be used to help children who lost their parents tragically, and now Canadians are turning to crowdsourcing to help pay their food bills. Officials say that 56,000 campaigns were started just to pay for the cost of food alone. Why doesn't the Prime Minister just axe the tax so prices can come down?
Before the President of the Treasury Board gets up to respond to that question, I'm going to encourage all members, please, on both sides of the House, to please allow the person who is asking the question to ask it uninterrupted, and allow the person to answer the question uninterrupted.
There, this is the Fergus hour.
President of the Treasury Board.
Mr. Speaker, the difference between that side of the House and this side of the House is that we don't deny the existence of climate change, and we want to protect it for generations to come. So I have, again, a question.
You know where you can put your climate change? In your obsession with climate change?
Mr. Speaker, by voting against $1,200 for Ontario families, $1,800 for Alberta families, $1,200 for Manitoba families. Mr. Speaker, that's taking money away from Canadians by telling them they're not going to have the rebates and voting against. That's not common sense.
Screw your rebates. Stop taxing me to death.
Edmonton, please. And to all members, it's really important that we do listen to the question. It's hard for the Speaker to understand. I understand perhaps that the President of the Treasury Board was referring to the Speaker. I hope the comments do fall through the Speaker.
Oh, shut up, Fergus.
The honourable member from Thornhill.
After 8 years of this Liberal NDP government, carbon taxes are driving up the cost of food. People are literally turning to dumpsters because they can't afford groceries. A report from the Toronto Star says dumpster diving is a new trend. So here's what you won't read in the Star. Conservatives will axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime. What does the Toronto Star have to write in order for this radical environment minister to show some compassion and stop the 23% April 1st tax hike for all Canadians?
The Honourable President of the Treasury Board.
Mr. Speaker, as I said, on this side of the House, we'll continue to fight climate change while putting money back into the pockets of Canadian families. As I mentioned, that means we're going to be providing rebates to Canadians, money back in their pockets, which the Conservatives
you're
are
right.
going to
There's
vote
no talk
against.
about the
So I
harm,
ask
the online
you, Mr.
harms
Speaker,
bill. We
through
got to
you
get
to the opposition.
some
When
conversation
are they
going
to
on
stop
this.
cutting supports to Canadians and pay attention to
I
the
don't know.
most vulnerable
I don't know
in
why
this
they're not
country?
talking about it. This is the worst legislation in front of the House of Commons. And there's not a word being said by the opposition
Speaker, the
about it.
radical environment minister who couldn't sell his own carbon tax, which the Prime
All they
Minister
want to
had
talk
to
about is
rebrand, won't even
goddamn
get up and
carbon
answer
tax.
the question. How is he going to rebrand dumpster diving? This is the minister who wants to ban cars, ban roads, ban Canadian energy, ban straws, and ban stoves, and tells Canadians that they have it better. We all know that after 8 years, this tired government and the environment minister are out of control, but will someone over there stand up for struggling Canadians and let him walk back his carbon tax hike like he has to do with everything else?
Order. Order. The Honourable Minister for Innovation.
Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House, we'll be standing up for Canadians. Every single member on this House is willing to stand on this side, Mr. Speaker. And whilst the Conservative would like to make a story, just look at our records, Mr. Speaker, when it comes. Just look at our record, Mr. Speaker. We have led the industrial revolution in electric cars, Mr. Speaker. We have brought more investment.
Order. I hate to interrupt a member while they have the floor, but it is important for the chair to ask all members to allow members to please have that opportunity. I'll ask, there are some members whose voices carry. They know who they are. I ask them to please keep their voices down.
Whose voices
so
carry?
I can allow the honourable member
What,
to
you're
finish
going to
his
kick those
question
people out
with
now?
15 seconds left on the clock. 15 seconds.
Speaker, I'd like to remind Canadians know that on this side of the House, we believe you can fight climate change and have a prosperous future for our children, Mr. Speaker. We brought Stellantis in this country. We brought Volkswagen in this country. We brought Norval in this country. Mr. Speaker, we have created jobs for the next generation, fight climate change, and ensure Canada will lead in the 21st century.
The honourable member for Kenora.
While Conservatives will axe the tax, fix the homes, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime, this NDP Liberal.
Well, he's having a hard time for that one. Oh, yeah.
Order. Colleagues. I think there's colleagues, I think it's important for all of us to remember. I'm going to ask, I think it's important for all of us to remember the old expression there, but for the grace of God I go. And we've all sometimes made a mistake. I'm going to ask the honourable member
what is he
from Kenora to start his question again from the top.
Oh, okay. It wasn't that glaring an error.
Axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime.
This is the first time the guy's asked the question.
Or the corruption, Mr. Speaker. 1 in 5 families are living in energy poverty, and we know that rate is even higher in rural areas like Northern Ontario, Mr. Speaker. So while they laugh about it, why doesn't this Prime Minister finally axe his April carbon tax hike so that Canadians can afford to heat their
You're not
homes?
hearing Poilievre complain about Trudeau not being there because Poilievre wants to be in Ukraine too. And I'm just so fed up with the Conservatives supporting the Liberals on Ukraine.
I hope he'll get up from his place, walk down to the Leader of the Opposition and say, pass the fall economic statement, help Canadians, pass childcare, help the moms and dads out there who are waiting for those needed supports. Tell that to his leader. When will that member, instead of trying to get the leader's lines right, stand up for Canadians and get them the supports that they need?
I think Trudeau's. Oh, look. Where is that? God, I can't keep up with your comments today. I think Trudy is in Poland getting
Mr.
some
Speaker, no matter how much they try to distract or deny it, their plan simply isn't working. The carbon
Your
tax
comments
isn't
are beautiful.
an environmental plan
Thank you.
because emissions are on the rise. More Canadians are paying more
Makes my day.
The tax than they're getting back in rebates.
Yeah,
1 in
Uniparty,
5
Greg,
families are
Kate,
living
you're right.
in
On
energy
Ukraine,
poverty, and 2
the
million
Conservatives
Canadians
and the
are going
Liberals
to
and
a
the
food
NDP are
bank
Uniparty.
every single
Damn
month.
right, and I'm not
Mr. Speaker,
putting
how
up
much
with
more
it.
must Canadians struggle
Yeah,
before
of course
they
I
finally
want to see
listen
Poilievre win the next
our
election.
common sense plan and
But
axe the tax?
I'm not going to let him off the hook on Ukraine. Not for a minute. Sick of these billions going to this losing war, to this corrupt Zelensky government. We all know it's corrupt. It's all going in the Swiss bank account. All of this money, it's all unaccountable money. Zelensky's a clown, just like Trudeau.
Canadians noticed at home how the honourable member from Kenora was able to ask his question relatively free of interruption. I'm going to ask the Honourable Minister
thank you,
to
it's nice to know somebody out there loves me. I tell you, the Liberals don't love me.
Mr. Speaker, while Conservatives still debate whether or not climate change is real, while some of those members say that climate change is actually created by body heat from humans, others say that carbon dioxide is good for
stop
the planet,
farting,
Mr. Speaker.
Stephen.
200,000 farmers in the last
There's so much
decade,
hot air coming out of your
200,000
mouth.
farmers in the last decade say they've experienced the impacts of climate change, making food costs going up. There's no link between carbon pricing and food price, but there is a link between climate change impacts and food prices. What's the Conservative response? More climate change, Mr. Speaker.
Your carbon tax has nothing to do with the high price of food. How stupid are you, Gilbo? Or how much of a liar are you?
Order.
The Honourable Member for Shefford. Yesterday, MPs from all parties, Liberal, Conservative, New Democrats, and the Bloc, unanimously voted to do away with 2 classes of seniors for old age security payments. Remember that the government decided to limit benefit increases to those aged 75 and over. Well, in committee, MPs from all parties voted to end this bad idea. All that remains is for the government to grant the royal recommendation so that we can put an end to these 2 classes of seniors.
All the best to you.
Will they give a grant royal recommendation to Bill C-319?
What the hell is that about?
Since 2015, we've been here for seniors.
Oh, she's
the OAS increase
I wonder if he's
was the right thing to do. Seniors are running down their savings and need health care. We also enhanced the
selling
GIS,
heat pumps lately, Shamish,
as well as old age security, introduced a new dental care system. Thank you. The Honourable Member for Lac Saint-Jean. When it comes to asylum seekers, the Minister of Immigration has some cheek. Since 2021, Quebec has been asking the federal government to reimburse costs and share the burden of welcoming newcomers for 3 years.
Roger.
And today, the minister has the nerve to assert, and I quote, that he never got the impression that Quebec really wanted to sit down. He complained that from one day to the next, Quebec throws expenses at him at press briefings. Does he realize that if he'd paid his debts since 2021, and if he negotiated instead of hiding, there wouldn't be a problem today? The Honourable Minister of Immigration.
The Bloc is such a waste of space, you know.
I think it's fair to talk about the reality. Imagine if
sometimes good questions, usually
bill when we're
completely irrelevant questions to most Canadians.
Conference and I double the bill without justifying the doubling of the expenses. We need responsible government, and I'm talking about people in my riding in the downtown Montreal who welcome asylum seekers, and they haven't received 1 cent for a Quebec government. We have to justify these cents. We're ready to work with the government of Quebec. The Honourable Member for Lac Saint-Jean, Mr. Speaker, the bill would be lower if the federal government processed asylum seekers with an acceptable time frame. And that's a Liberal, David Hurtel, who reminds us this in the Journal de Montreal. Quebec, under Philippe Couillard, experienced the same issues in 2018. Already, Quebec was asking for the federal government to shorten delays. What should take a maximum of 60 days shouldn't take a minimum of 60 months. 6 years later, nothing's changed. According to the former Liberal minister, the federal government's inaction is criminal. When will the minister finally tackle these criminal, inhumane, and extremely costly delays? The Honourable Minister of Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship. The member is partly right. True, there is a historical flow of people coming to Canada to seek asylum. There's a 50 or 60% increase. There's more work to be done, but it doesn't involve sending money to Quebec that is not spending on asylum seekers. It has to be fair. And
the immigration
there are a lot of people
minister
moving to Ontario, and we help them
what
there
a
too.
Bloody
and
joke you are.
We need, first and foremost, to treat these people
Yes, Roger, the
humanely. We're
bloc
ready
is
to
a
do this, and I
treasonous
hope Quebec is
organization. I've
as
been
well.
saying
The
that
honourable
since I
member
worked in
from
the House.
Leeds,
I've
Grenville, Thousand
never had any
Islands,
time for them all.
Lakes.
Well,
I don't know what the hell they're doing
Conservatives
there.
will axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime. After 8 years of this NDP Liberal Prime Minister, he's not worth the cost, the crime, or the corruption. And today, the Commissioner of the RCMP confirmed that their scandal-plagued $60 million Arrive scam app is, in fact, under RCMP investigation. Now, we've seen before this Prime Minister use powers of the executive to try and shield himself from criminal investigations, like he did with his trip to the Aga Khan's Island and in SNC Lavalin scandal, both seeing him found guilty of breaking the Ethics Act. Will the Prime Minister fully cooperate with this RCMP investigation?
Oh, Prime Minister's not even there to tell you.
Mr. Speaker, not only will the government cooperate with the RCMP at every occasion, in fact, it's the government that referred a number of these cases to the RCMP. My friend has just realized what the RCMP confirmed some weeks ago, that they are looking into the issue of ArriveCan. Mr. Speaker, our government thinks it's important that the Auditor General's report be followed carefully, and we think it's important for parliamentary committees and other investigations to determine the facts in this issue before we throw mud around the House of Commons.
The honourable member from Leeds, Grenville, Thousand
Well, we don't
Islands,
want to throw mud around, do we, Dominique
His
Legault?
colleagues thought that the Auditor General's work was so important, they wouldn't have voted against the audit that the Leader of the Opposition and Common Sense Conservatives voted for. And that's how we found out about this $60 million scandal that lands at that minister's feet. And now we have the RCMP investigating them. Twice before, the Prime Minister has used the powers of the executive to shield himself from investigation in criminal investigations with the RCMP. Our question is simple this time. Will the Prime Minister interfere in the investigation again, or will he allow the RCMP to do their work?
The RCMP is in the Liberal government.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Yes, I'd like to underscore the remarkable work
Have another
of Auditor
COVID shot.
General, her support to the RCMP's
This
operations.
moron.
Well, as she has mentioned several weeks ago, that she's already said this publicly on several occasions. Perhaps we could find the member to find places where she said that. She said clearly that she was already communicating with the RCMP to make sure she gets the
Too
information.
close. The guy who said, get your COVID shot for the rest of your life.
The Ethics Committee,
Oh,
the RCMP
I'll shut up for Larry.
have now confirmed they are investigating the $60 million plus Arrive scam boondoggle. While common sense conservatives will axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime, this NDP PM is not worth the cost, crime or corruption after 8 years. Will the Prime Minister cooperate with the RCMP in their criminal investigation, or will he yet again try to obstruct?
The Honourable Minister of Public Services and Procurement.
We know how good the Conservative Party is in providing slogans and doing all sorts of those things. It's a bit strange, however, that this is breaking news, because it's been known for many weeks now that the RCMP and the Auditor General have been working really well together, and they'll be keeping working together really well. That's what their job is about.
They won't press any charges. You know they won't.
Evidence from the Ethics Committee. A two-person consultant company working out of their basement doing no IT work received 20 million tax dollars. Talk about hitting the taxpayer lottery. This sham of a company is already under RCMP investigation. Today we learned the RCMP is investigating this into all kinds of criminality. So I'll ask again, will the Prime Minister fully cooperate, waive all cabinet confidences, or will he hide again and obstruct?
The Honourable Minister for Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, my honourable colleague learned something today that has been known in the public domain for a number of weeks. Mr. Speaker, we have said from the beginning, the government's responsibility is to ensure that taxpayers' money is always managed well. In this case, Mr. Speaker,
How can he say that with a straight face?
Identified a number of opportunities that needed to be investigated and where the government will follow all of the recommendations. And Mr. Speaker, if people have done something inappropriate with taxpayers' money, they will be held to account.
The foreign interference investigation is going nowhere, by the way. I see somebody just asked that question. Oh, yeah, I hear. I don't really care what this woman has got to say here, but We'll get back in a sec to that. But no, the foreign interference investigation, the committee is going nowhere. They are just there's infighting going on. There's division. There's nothing coming out of that. Largely because the Liberals know most Canadians don't seem to care about that. We care here, I know that, but it's outrageous. I just wanted to stop for a sec to let you in on that one.
Northern Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the member for that very important question. We know that food prices in the North are too high. Affordability is a real issue in the North. Our government is absolutely committed to ensuring that 100% of the Nutrition North retail subsidy is passed on directly to Northerners. We have worked and we will continue to work with territorial governments, with Indigenous partners, and with people who live in the North and the Arctic to bring prices down. There's a lot of work to do. We are committed to getting it done.
Here.
The honourable member.
Committed to getting it done.
Mr. Speaker, personal support workers are the backbone of our senior care system. They relieve young families worried about how they will take care of both their children and their parents. But despite everything they do, many of these workers cannot retire with the dignity they deserve. And for 3 years, this Liberal government has promised SEIU and other healthcare units help with building a retirement savings, a $50 million commitment, yet not a single dollar has flowed to these workers. New Democrats demand better for our care workers. So, will this Liberal government honor their commitment
You people
and
are a
release
big
the funds
joke.
that these healthcare workers deserve before the fiscal year?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
First of all, Mr. Speaker, let me say a huge thank you to personal support care workers. During the pandemic, which was a time so difficult for all of us, it was enormously difficult for personal support workers who did extraordinary work. And we did make a commitment to support provinces. It's the provinces who have principal responsibility for this. We expect them to step up and support personal support workers. We've said we're there to help them, but it's their lead, and they need to make sure that these individuals are compensated and acknowledged in the way that they
Mark
deserve.
Holland is the crybaby. He doesn't like people telling him that he's the euthanasia czar.
Mr. Speaker, last November, our government tabled legislation to ban the use of replacement workers in federally regulated industries.
Oh, another
a commitment
softball
from our
question time here.
2021 election platform. This is something that the labor movement in Canada has been asking for since before Canada was a country. This will make both the collective bargaining process stronger and make employers and unions focus on the negotiating table where the best deals are made.
Mark
Will the
Holland, Minister of Death,
Labor
he sure
explain
is.
to this House how our bill to ban replacement workers will strengthen the collective bargaining process in this country?
The Honourable Minister of Labour.
Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank the member from Newmarket Aurora for the question. Mr. Speaker, we are banning replacement workers. We are banning replacement workers because we believe in collective bargaining, because the best deals are made at the table, because bigger paychecks are negotiated at the table, because better labor relations and long-term stability are created at the table. Let's keep that bargaining table free and fair with the full support of every MP in this House. With unanimous consent, let's vote to move Bill C-58. Let's make some history. Let's ban replacement workers.
The Honourable Member for Mégantic-Clérable. Cut the taxes, build the homes, fix the budget, stop the crime. That's the common sense Conservative plan. Common sense is also getting to the bottom of the vastness of the ArriveCan scandal.
Nice slogan,
now, the
fellas.
Bloc may be able
But why don't we
to
talk
turn a
about the
blind eye
Online
to
Harms
millions
Act?
of
That's really
wasted
important.
dollars. The
Stop
Conservatives,
talking
however,
about your
we
little
want
slogans.
to get to the bottom of the
And
ArriveCan scandal.
not worth the cost.
So,
Not worth it.
will the RCMP cooperate, and will the minister cooperate? The Honourable Minister of Public
Yeah, let's
Services
ban the
and
Liberal
Procurement.
NDP.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would first like to commend my colleague, who I much appreciate. I'd like to commend him on his skill at repeating his leader's slogans. So they're really great with the slogans, but not so great at following the news, because for weeks now, the Auditor General has been working with many organizations, including the RCMP, to get to the bottom of the issues mentioned in her report published a few weeks ago. The Honourable Member for Mégantic-Clérable. Well, If my colleague had better awareness of what's going on in Canada, Mr. Speaker, he would know that after 8 years of this Liberal Prime Minister, 2 million Canadians use food banks each month. In fact, food banks have to, in fact, wait in line themselves to have enough food for the people waiting in line for food at the food banks. And that's what this Canada is under this Prime Minister. The Bloc Québécois and the Liberals found a way to spend 60 million for an app that should have cost 80,000. So will the Prime Minister fully cooperate with the RCMP, or will he once again engage in an Arrive scam cover-up? The Honourable Innovation Minister. Mr. Speaker, what Canadians see on TV is a Conservative Party that is against all measures, against everything, Mr. Speaker. Every time we have presented measures to help Canadians, they have systematically voted against them. It's important to know that, Mr. Speaker. They voted against reforming the Competition Act. That's one of the most important reforms in Canada. So Canadians are watching the Conservatives on TV. They see them. Here's a question for the Conservatives, Mr. Speaker. Will they vote in favor of our bill to offer consumers better choice and to improve competition in Canada? It's time for the Conservatives to do something for Canadians. The Honourable Member for Charlebourg, Haute-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, the RCMP Commissioner was very clear this morning, saying that there should be a full investigation into RCMP. But then the RCMP Commissioner said in committee that the Prime Minister had blocked the SNC-Lavalin investigation and the ArriveCan investigation. So will the Prime Minister confirm that he will fully cooperate in the RCMP's investigation without blocking or hindering it? The Honourable Public Safety Minister. Well, Mr. Speaker, once again, I'm very happy that my colleague has noticed something that's been well known for a few weeks now. My colleague, the Minister of Procurement and Public Services, confirmed that the Auditor General investigated contracts to the CBSA, and that is a worrisome situation. But now, of course, Mr. Speaker, the government's responsibility is to ensure that measures are in place to ensure that this does not reoccur, and it is our duty to cooperate with law enforcement and police agencies which will investigate. The Honourable Member for Charlebourg, Haute-Saint-Charles. But you know what? In 2021, the government voted against an inquiry by the Auditor General. So, 10,000 people had to quarantine because of Arrive Scam, a tool which was not at all working. So, Mr. Speaker, can the Prime Minister confirm once and for all that he will not hinder the RCMP's investigation? Can he confirm that he will give all the documents that we need so that we can fully shed light on what happened with Arrive Scam? The Honourable Minister of Public Services and Procurement. Thank you,
I'm not
Mr.
hearing
Speaker.
about the online
Now, we have given
Arms
many
Act, and
answers
this
to
is
this
very bad
question
news.
many times, but there's
But
a question we've asked
that's
that
why we got to
remains
put pressure
unanswered.
on these people.
Given the politics of intimidation, insults, given that the leader of the Conservative Party likes to give insults and intimidations, will he in fact meet the Municipal Council of Quebec next week to tell elected officials in Quebec why the Conservative leader is calling Quebec officials incompetent? The Honourable Member for Beauport-Limoilou. I ask the member for Portneuf-Jacques-Cartier to please let the colleague whose turn it is ask her question. Once again, the member for Beauport-Limoilou. Thank you. ArriveCan is the consequence of the federal government's dependence on dubious consultants. GC Strategies, a two-man operation that doesn't offer any services, pocketed $20 million. And they're not the only ones.
I got the wrong
another
name.
two-man firm that once again doesn't offer any services, got $8 million. 99% of Dalian's contracts are
Well,
with the
that's a
federal
useful
government.
question.
And it's hard to know what Dalian is actually doing with our money because La Presse has reported that Dalian operates in 2 tax havens. How many other companies like this is the federal government handing our money to? And what is it doing to make sure that they repay our money? The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now, the ArriveCan situation is, of course, unacceptable, and that's why work is ongoing. Investigations are being conducted. Now, as for tax havens, that's just as unacceptable.
What a
We have a
mistake to
competent
make.
team with all the tools they need to
These
investigate.
people are so
They can
incredibly
investigate
arrogant.
any file as soon as it becomes necessary. The Honourable Member for Terrebonne. Dependence on dubious consultants is not limited to ArriveCan, nor is it limited to Liberals. The Conservatives themselves, under Stephen Harper, awarded millions in contracts to KRAYDEN'S, a company that offered no services that was founded by the same two people who pocketed $20 million for ArriveCan. Thankfully, the committee will be investigating all the contracts awarded to these two individuals, but we need to take things further. Will the government commit to disclosing all the contracts since 2004 between both the Conservatives and the Liberals, and all the companies that offer no services other than finding subcontractors?
Now, I haven't seen any response from Poilievre on the Online Harms Act yet. I'm wondering why.
The Honourable Minister of Public Services
I'm hoping to get something out of them this afternoon. I got to get down to Parliament Hill.
Mr. Speaker,
and start
just
asking
under 4
questions.
Years ago, Canada
and stop doing this stuff from home.
The worst health
because
crisis in a century, the worst economic
nice to be able to do
crisis
this every
since
day,
the
but
30s. We had to close the border
nobody's asking
at the
these
request
questions.
of then President Trump. There were hundreds of people
Because
dying each week in long-term care homes everywhere across the country.
Anyway,
So
it
we needed to take
frustrates me.
action quickly
Just
and
gonna shut up.
effectively.
Do
That's what we
close
asked
the
the public
back
service.
king for a second here. It frustrates me that we're not, the new media, independent media, are not always asking tough questions of conservatives. They need to do that. We can't let conservatives off the hook just because we want them to win the next election.
This government spent a minimum of $60 million on ArriveCan. It could even be more. We don't know because there's missing documentation. IT middleman GC Strategies got $20 million for doing no actual work. The top cop in the RCMP announced today a full investigation into ArriveCan. So today the Prime Minister has a decision to make. Will he cooperate with the RCMP or will he obstruct justice like he usually does?
The Honourable Minister for Public Works.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, this question has received multiple answers, including from our colleague, the Minister of Public Safety. If the Conservatives are trying to find new questions to ask, may I suggest a couple of them? Why, for instance, during the 8 years of our government, have we built 10 times more homes than during the 10 years of the Conservative government? Why has poverty fallen by half?
I hope you're right, Autumn Christian. I hope they're waiting for Trudeau to be there, but God, they don't keep waiting. Because this is serious stuff. I mean, good God, Andrew Coyne didn't even like this bill.
The Honourable Member from
And Andrew Coyne is usually completely out to lunch.
Even the Auditor General said that a crisis situation is no excuse for this lack of value for money for Canadians. Conservatives have put forward today a motion related to ArriveCan to get money back from the contractors who did no actual work. There is one person in this chamber who can make that decision, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister. The Prime Minister has the power to make the decision to get the money back for hardworking Canadians. So will the Prime Minister commit today to getting the money back for Canadians, or will he shirk his responsibility like he usually does?
The Honourable Minister for Public Safety.
Speaker, on the contrary, our government has said from the beginning that those that have misused taxpayers' money will be held to account. And once the investigations that the CBSA, for example, has ordered internally, once the RCMP report is completed, if in fact money was misappropriated, of course the government will take all the steps to recoup that money. Mr. Speaker, we've said from the beginning that anybody who mishandles taxpayers' money will face the consequences, and that's exactly what this government is doing.
The Honourable Member from Sherwood Park, Fort Saskatchewan.
Mr. Speaker, those who misuse taxpayers' money will face the consequences in the next election. While common sense Conservatives will axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime, the NDP Liberal Prime Minister is not worth the cost of crime or corruption after 8 years. We've heard today ministers telling us that RCMP criminal investigation into corruption in their government has become so commonplace that after 8 years, it's not really news anymore. Mr. Speaker, I'm old enough to remember a time when it was a big deal that the RCMP investigated the government. It's been too many times, and it's time this government be held to account. Now, finally, will the minister tell us whether or not this government will cooperate with the RCMP investigation?
Yes, yes, Alice. Coyne is completely out to lunch. I said that. But when he doesn't like the Online Harms Act because he thinks it's oppressive,
What
I
we've
think
said
maybe
from the
there's
beginning,
something
Mr.
wrong here.
Speaker, is that we take the responsibility to manage taxpayers' money very seriously. That's why when the Border Services Agency identified irregularities, they began an internal investigation and they referred the matter, as is appropriate, to the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. Mr. Speaker, our government will always do what's necessary to
LeBlanc
hold
always looks like
everyone
he's
to
just been
account
on a bender.
who may have misused taxpayers' money.
The honourable member from Winnipeg South Centre.
Mr. Speaker, Indigenous tourism has the power to create jobs, to transform the tourism industry, and to advance
Indigenous
reconciliation.
tourism.
Indigenous tourism is valued at over $1.2 billion and supports over
What, is that like a trip
30,000
to the
jobs across
casino?
the country. In November, the Minister of Tourism announced the creation of the micro and small business component of the
hell is
Indigenous
that?
Tourism Fund.
That's
Can
like
the minister tell us how our government is supporting the Indigenous
that's
tourism
like the
industry
gender demining
in
that
order to
Trudeau
ensure
offered
its
Ukraine.
continued
Did you all
growth?
hear about that?
Thank you, Mr.
I wrote a
Speaker.
story in the Post Millennial. Have a look at
The
it.
Honourable Minister
Or
of
just
Tourism.
read the back.
Thank you, Mr.
It's
Speaker. I thank my colleague for his
incomprehensible.
question.
Something
The
called
Indigenous Tourism Fund
gender-based
seeks to
demining.
advance economic reconciliation.
How,
Today,
how
at the
crazy are
International
these
Conference
people?
on
I mean,
Indigenous
they
Tourism,
just never cease to amaze
our
you.
government announced over 79 projects, unlike the Conservatives, who want to slash the
Yeah.
Indigenous Tourism Fund. On this side of the House, we believe in their future.
Support Indigenous tourism, and we will always support their communities to make their own
Indigenous
decisions,
tourism.
choosing their own path, and growing the
Can we just
tourism
have like
sector
tourism
on
for
their own
everybody,
pace.
not why do we have to keep subdividing the country ethnically and
Mr. Speaker,
racially?
let's make a
It's just
contrast.
such
While
stupidity.
common sense conservatives will axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime, this prime minister is tripping over his feet trying to save his reputation.
Yeah, I think I'll do
by
some
covering
Indigenous
up
tourism tonight.
Yet another scandal. He's not worth the cost, the crime, or the corruption. Will the prime minister release all the Winnipeg lab documents today, or will the shame and embarrassment be too much to endure?
Well, we're finishing strong, folks. The
Mr. Speaker,
numbers are going up.
When it comes to redactions, it was the Public Health Agency that conducted them. And I would
When it
ask
comes
the
to
opposition
euthanasia,
if
I'm
their
all for it.
position is that a government should be involved in redacting documents. That's a deeply disturbing thing for them to hold.
That's
as a
what you do.
proposition. Instead, what happened is we asked Parliament, and it was actually our suggestions. The Conservatives refused to look at the documents or participate.
Thank you,
Eventually,
Ariel.
they did.
Thank
to
you,
ensure
Ariel. I'm going
that
to have a look at that.
parliamentarians could look at what information was there and make a decision if the redactions done by the Public Health Agency were or were not appropriate.
This
The
is
process worked. It was a process
serious
that we
stuff.
Introduced.
I don't know
and
why
was
he
one
should have
that
brought
they
it up now
supported
today.
eventually.
The honourable member
Anyway.
from Cumberland Colchester.
Well, Speaker, let's make a contrast again. Two scientists at our only high security lab collaborated with the Beijing government. At least one Beijing military scientist was allowed in the lab. Members of Parliament, including Liberals, have said that it is essential for the government to release the documents. Why are the Liberals still covering up the scandal? Are they afraid of the embarrassment? This Liberal government needs to release those lab documents today for all Canadians to see.
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'm in the awkward position of agreeing. We are actually the ones who said the documents need to be looked at by parliamentarians.
Wow, this is the
We were
longest
ones that
comment I've ever
introduced a
seen here.
process that asked parliamentarians to get together. Unfortunately, the Conservatives said no. Eventually, they did participate, and then parliamentarians had an opportunity to take a look at the redactions done by the Public Health
Okay,
Agency.
I hope you had a chance
And
to read
now
that
those documents, after the work of parliamentarians have been done, will be shared, and that's exactly what we wanted to happen, to make sure that there is maximum public exposure, at the same time respecting our national security laws.
It only stands so much maximum public
The Honourable
exposure
Member
of
for
you, Mark
Pont-Rouge
Owen.
Cartier. This is unreal. I don't
The
know how
maid
they
man,
even
yeah.
look themselves in the mirror at night. Now, Mr. Speaker, we, the common sense Conservatives, are going to axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and,
Oh, would
what's
you
more, stop the crime.
Why do they constantly
This
talk? It's
Liberal
driving me
government,
nuts.
they allow
Especially when they
violent
can't even get it
criminals
right
to serve
sometimes.
their sentences in the comfort of their living rooms. And they're allowing this in partnership with the Bloc Québécois. A teenage girl was lured by a former police officer who is serving his sentence at home. I'll give you another example. A woman was attacked at knife point by her ex-husband, who had been arrested twice for domestic violence. When will the Liberals stop their soft on crime policies and protect victims instead of criminals?
Good comment,
The
Roger.
Honourable Minister of Justice and Attorney General of Canada. Well,
Here he is. Here's the
if this
Eric
is the matter here
Verani,
is about intimate
the
partner violence
non-entity
and
who is
domestic
your
violence,
Attorney
and that is a
General
top priority on this side of the House.
with your
Now,
Online
we address
Arms
the
Act. It's
situation
all
in two
about the
ways,
kids.
in both C-75 and
It's
in
not about
C-48.
censorship. It's all
In
about
terms
protecting
of
the kids.
conditions for
Hey, Eric.
release on bail for those who commit this type of crime. We will always fight against domestic violence, and we will protect men and women everywhere in Canada.
The honourable member from King's Hands.
Speaker, last week the Minister of Agriculture was in Malaysia and the Philippines on a trade mission to promote and secure new markets for our agri-food products.
He must have been snorting
Instead of
coke
taking
now.
a Team Canada approach to promoting trade, and Speaker, I will say they've been a bit iffy on trade, just ask Ukraine, the Conservatives decided to gaslight and critique the minister for simply highlighting the importance.
Yeah, just ask Ukraine. All that money in the Swiss bank accounts. What a joke.
Colleagues, I'm actually having difficulty.
Let's have a free trade deal with a government that won't be there in 2 months.
Members on all sides to please carry your conversations a lot quieter so that we can hear the member who is far away from the chair.
Anyone with half a brain knows this war is over, and that the money is all unaccountable and it's going in a Swiss bank account.
So,
And the Conservatives should know that too. Get some goddamn grow some moxie. Get some courage.
And the importance of seafood industry to Atlantic Canada. Can the minister update this House on his trade mission and educate the member from Thornhill on the importance of lobster to Atlantic Canada? Thank you, Mr.
The Honourable Minister of
Yeah,
Agriculture and
that's right up there with the Indigenous tourism question.
For giving me another opportunity to promote world-class Canadian product, including lobster.
Oh, there's our answer to Joe Biden, Lawrence Macaulay.
In fact, that's just what we did.
They make a great comedy team, the two of them.
Pacific Trade Office that will help promote Canadian agriculture and seafood products. I always promote Canadian products overseas when I'm overseas, Mr. Speaker, no matter in the government or opposition. And it's vitally important that we promote the fishers and farmers who work so hard for their dollar.
Oh, Lawrence.
From Vancouver East.
More than 8 million people in Sudan have been displaced through 10 months of war. This has been devastating for people in Sudan and their family members in Canada.
Black Rock owns most of Ukraine. Yeah, and they're going to lose it.
Standards, and it should apply everywhere else. Canada
The longer the war goes on, the less of Ukraine is going to exist. And Black Rock isn't going to have an ounce of it.
Ukrainians got to safety.
If there's anything good coming out of this war, that will be the only thing.
People in Gaza and 3,250 for Sudan. Will the minister lift these caps so that no Canadian family in war zones is discriminated against?
The Honourable Minister for Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the member well knows, the pathway for people fleeing war in Sudan opens today. We worked on this with a number of Sudanese umbrella organizations on this important measure so that Canadians are really showing and opening their doors to people fleeing war. I'm always ready to be more flexible as we see the situation evolve. And it's clear that we, as Canadians, need to do more when it comes to, in particular, this forgotten war that obviously is getting less media attention than all the other devastating wars around the world. But we're prepared to do more, and we'll continue to work with the umbrella organizations to make sure that they can welcome Sudanese people fleeing war. Thank you.
These people are just,
The Honourable Member from Victoria.
Mr. Speaker, 30% of the screening officers at Victoria's airport have lost their jobs without due process and with no access to an appeal. Their employer wanted to keep them on, but the Canadian Air Transport Security Authority interfered, undermining labor relations and costing people their jobs. To make matters worse, the Minister of Transportation refuses to meet with them. Yet again, the Liberals are dropping the ball when it comes to protecting workers. Why is the minister refusing to meet with these workers and their union?
Get it and clap
The
more.
Honourable Minister of Labour. I thank the Honourable Member for her question.
Whoever
I can say certainly today of all days, we certainly stand with workers and we stand on with a stable and fair working environment.
Why today of all days? What's significant about February 27th?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Was that a Is there a pub crawl going on tonight?
It being 3:18, the House will now proceed to the taking of the deferred recorded division on the motion at the second reading stage of
Okay.
Bill C-58.
All in the members. That's it for now, folks, from question period and not very many answers. Thanks for watching today. We're keeping the numbers up. You know, it's important. I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed we didn't hear more or anything from the Conservatives about the Online Harm Act. I'm going to have a look at Mr. Poilievre's post on X to see where he stands on this. Like I say, when I did a broadcast this morning, I didn't even read the part about life imprisonment for hate speech, $70,000 fine. This is insanity, people. This is insanity, and we have got to wake Canadians up. Trudeau's tried to make them woke. Well, they have to awaken to reality. This is very important. And, you know, there's a lot of irresponsible people on YouTube who put lies up every day, who put BS up every day, who tell you things that are not true and they know they're not true. And they're playing into the hands of these liberals who just want to shut the whole thing down. And I've got no time for these idiots out there who don't want to talk about real things, who aren't journalists, who never interview people, who never actually go and ask questions of politicians, who don't do anything except recycle clips. And that's not what we're here for. We need to get directly involved. So thank you, everybody, for watching today. We're going to move the station up despite the censorship from Trudeau, despite the suppression from YouTube, because, yeah, they don't want this information out there. There's no question about that. And this bill will not stand in the long term. As long as there's Canadians who believe in their right to speak their mind, this bill will not pass. Not for long. Thanks for fighting. Resolve to resist. That's the theme. It's the motto of this broadcast, of this station, of this program, and we're going to continue to do that. So there's a big job ahead. But I've just started. And I've just started the fight. So thank you for your comments. They're wonderful. Thank you for your support. It's appreciated. And thank you for tuning in again today. And I'll be back again tomorrow with more information. And I'm going to continue to find out what's going on with this bill. Thank you so much. And we'll see you all tomorrow.